Welcome to Reading the Bible with Pastor. Today we're on a new book, the book of Esther. We have really gone really far into the future here. We're past the Exodus, past the time of the judges, past the time of the kings, past the Assyrian captivity, past the Babylonian captivity. Now Persia has taken over Babylon and a huge swath of territory here in the Middle East. And some of the exiles of Israel have returned back to Judah. And so we have a few of the exiles still in the land of Persia, here in Susa, the capital. And we'll start off here with chapter 1. But some of the things that you need to know before we really delve into reading this book is that there's no mention of God's name. But that doesn't mean that this book isn't valid or useful. We actually see how God's work is in this without us really saying his name. It's the same thing as it is for us today. You may not be thinking about him, you may not be praying to him, you may not mention his name all day, although I would encourage you to do all those things. But he's at work, constantly, always, giving us our daily bread, all the things that we need in our life. And he gives us protection as well. Here in Esther, we're going to hear about the protection God gives to his people. And so let us carry that idea here throughout. As we begin here, we're actually going to hear not about the Israelites, not about Esther, but we're going to hear about King Ahasuerus. Now, I may be mispronouncing that. I've heard Ahasuerus. Nonetheless, we're going to stick with Ahasuerus because it's just easier on me. And you may know this king of Persia by a different name, King Xerxes. These are two different names for the same person. Xerxes is the Greek name, and Ahasuerus is the Hebrew name. Now, this beginning as we start, we're going to see how vast his empire is, how wealthy and how much influence King Ahasuerus has. In fact, his Hebrew name means mighty man, and we're going to see how mighty this man is. So let us begin. Now in the days of Ahasuerus, who reigned from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces, in those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in Susa, the capital, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a feast for all of his officials and servants. Okay, this may seem like just some numbers and things like that. This is the largest empire that's been in the world up to this time. He is ruling over a huge swath of land. Taking a look at 127 provinces. We have 50 states in the United States. He has over double that many states, if you will, that he is governing over through the use of officials and servants. So let's continue there. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles and governors of the provinces were before him, while he showed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor and pomp of his greatness for many days, 180 days, half the year dedicated to just celebrating. If you've ever put on a party at your house, you know how much preparation it takes, and then how much work it takes to clean everything up, and then all the work during the entire party. And they're having a party 180 days. This is a huge expense. It's tiring, but it's showing how mighty Ahasuerus is, how much he has. Verse 5. And when these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present in Susa, the capital, both great and small, a feast lasting for 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. So for another week he is celebrating with those in the capital. There were white cotton curtains and violet hangings fastened with cords of fine linen, and purple to silver rods, and marble pillars, and also couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and precious stones. Verse 6 here is describing his wealth and the material things. It starts off with white cotton curtains. Um, that might sound like, well, that's a cheap thing. But at this point in time, cotton was really just beginning to become into fashion. And here it's basically the top of the list, white cotton curtains. He's able to afford something that is being now just recently being produced. And not only are they just cotton curtains, they are white, which means they have to be washed and bleached. They have to go that extra mile to make these as beautiful as they are. They go on, they talk about fine linen. Fine linen is hard to make, it doesn't stretch, but it's really good for the Middle East weather to help wick off the moisture and keep you cool. Purple was a found from snails. There's some sayings that say that it took 12,000 snails, and you had to milk them, of all things, to create the purple dye to make 1.8 ounces of dye. So just enough to dye a fringe of a garment. And yet he has all of these purple things around. And talking about silver rods and marble, and couches of gold and silver. And then it says a mosaic pavement of porphyry. Porphyry is a type of granite, and so there's granite, marble, mother of pearl, and precious stones. So even the floor that you walk on is amazing. So again, just showing his wealth and influence. So verse 7, drinks were served in golden vessels, vessels of different kinds, and the royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king. And drinking was according to this edict. There is no compulsion. Okay, so you got all of these wonderful things, feast of food, and then wine that the king is given, and then you can drink according to the edict. There is no compulsion. What that means is when the king drank, you were able to drink. Otherwise, you were not able to drink. And now there's no compulsion. You can drink and be merry however you want. It was free to go to the taking, free for the drinking. So again, just showing his wealth and influence. And then after this text about there was no compulsion, for the king had given orders to all the staff of his palace to do as each man desired. Go off, be merry, joyful, drink, eat, do all the other things. Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women in the palace that belonged to King Ahasuerus. All right, we're going to stop there for today. We'll pick up with verse 10. All of those things are to show how powerful King Ahasuerus or King Xerxes is. I want you to keep that in mind as we think about his power, his influence, and all the story that's going to unfold. We'll talk more about that, about how this man, this king's influence, and how the influence of God in all of our lives is even more powerful than this man who has 127 provinces under his government. So we'll pick up next time here with verse 10.